It takes a lot of work and a lot of planning to get to the point where you can retire. There are so many factors to consider and so many personal nuances that make almost every single person's situation unique. And most people want to find the path of least resistance to achieve that goal of not having to show up for work anymore. And because of that, I've seen that there are so many things that often get overlooked when planning for retirement. And in today's video, I'm going to share the 10 biggest retirement mistakes that I see new retirees make and what you can do to avoid making them when you retire. Now, this list comes from almost 20 years of working with retirees and seeing the patterns of what happens. Now, to get to retirement, most people do some sort of planning. They've decided on the big things like their withdrawal rates and what their expenses are. But it's the other not so obvious things that might seem like a good idea in the beginning, but turn out to be a mistake in the end, and that catch people off guard. So today, let's dive into the 10 biggest mistakes I see new retirees make. Now, the first mistake that I see new retirees often make is stacking another big change on top of already retiring. Retiring itself is a big change to your life. It's changing the way that you're interacting on a day-to-day basis with the people you're interacting with, where you're going, what you're doing, but stacking something else on top of that, and in this case, I'm talking about relocating or moving immediately right after you retire. Most people, they think it might be a good idea to go move somewhere else once they retire, and it is. It could be, depending on your individual circumstances, but doing that right out of the gate. What I've typically seen is that people make that rush to judgment way too fast. They haven't taken the time to actually think through what that move looks like, how to actually execute it, and what they need to do to think of all the little details because they spent so many months, so many years thinking about the retirement aspect of just saving, investing, and all the different financial planning items that come into play when you're talking about retirement, that they didn't think about all the nuances that happen when you're thinking about moving. And so what I've typically seen is people who move immediately end up wishing they would have waited a little while until they settled into their new lifestyle and figured out if moving was even the best thing for them. That brings me to the second mistake I've seen, and that is taking Social Security too early. Now, I know Social Security is a very polarizing topic. Some are going to tell you that they want to take it at 62 years old because, hey, you've paid into the system your entire career. You want to get your money out while you know you can get it. Others are adamant. I want to take it at the latest possible option, which is 70. Articles online are going to tell you 70 years old is going to give you the most amount that you can get in terms of your Social Security benefit. And a lot of people just somehow pick an age or they pick a strategy and they just hop right in. It didn't actually plan out what their Social Security strategy would be. Where I see this really come into play is not thinking of Social Security as a joint decision if you're married. Depending on who the higher earner is, who's got the larger benefit, there are strategies to figuring out how you can maximize Social Security, not just for you, but for your spouse and your family as well. And so what I've seen is, not saying that taking Social Security early is a mistake in your specific circumstances, but what I've seen is that people who just hop into a plan and decide to take it earlier than whether it's full retirement or even delaying it a little bit until age 70, most people end up regretting that decision when they get to the age of full retirement or get to the age of 70. They wish they, at that point, would have delayed taking Social Security a little bit later. Now, the third mistake that I see happen way too often is not planning for taxes appropriately. Now, most people know that in retirement, they're going to have to pay some sort of tax. If you've been contributing to a 401k your entire career, well, at some point you're going to be taking distributions from that, and those are going to be subject to ordinary income tax. But what most people don't think about is what rate should I have my withholding at when taking those distributions? Most people just set it up as a default of 10 or 15%, and that might just not be enough when it comes down to the end of the year when filing your taxes. And the other side of tax planning has to do with Social Security withholding. If your Social Security benefit pushes you into a higher tax bracket, well, your Social Security itself is going to be subject to income tax. And not having a withholding set for that income as well can leave you at the end of the year when you go to file your taxes with a large amount that you have to pay and possibly penalties if you didn't withhold enough. So making sure that as you're going into retirement and you're setting up your distribution and your income streams, that you're planning for taxes and exactly how much you should be withholding from each individual source. That brings me to mistake number 4 that I see, and that is a big major purchase early on. Now, this could be anything from a new home. We already talked about moving as a mistake that I've seen, but purchasing a new home and just relocating even in the same city. Now, it's a big purchase that I've actually seen clients who've bought a home and within 6 months sold that home and bought a new retirement home because they didn't really know what kind of retirement home they wanted. Buying an RV, I see as a major purchase that most people end up regretting because they don't spend as much time in that RV and wish that they would have just rented an RV for a couple weeks or a month to see if they would actually get the use out of it. Other major purchases that I've seen people regret are things like timeshares and boats. And if you're thinking about buying a timeshare, please reach out to us first. We'd be happy just to make sure that you're thinking about it all the way through, because I've seen nightmares when purchasing timeshares, and the last thing you want to do is get stuck into something that you are obligated to continue to pay for way down the road. So make sure that if you're buying any major purchase, you're working into your retirement plan and you really thought through that individual purchase. Real quick, sorry to interrupt. I have a crazy stat for you. Do you know that 96.5% of you that are watching this channel frequently have yet to hit the subscribe button? So if you like this video and you like what we do here, can you please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button? And in return, I promise you that I will do everything I can to make this channel more informative, more entertaining, and overall just better. So thank you. And now we can go back to what we were talking about. The next mistake that I've seen people make is getting too conservative with their investments. And I get it. Retirement's scary. You just quit that full-time job that was giving you a steady paycheck. You've done all of the planning, and you know that right now, at this point in time, you can retire without having to worry about money, and you can do it with the money that you currently have. So the thought is, well, I don't want to lose what I have. But if you are doing that and you pull everything out and you go into a money market fund or just in cash or something that's not focusing on your long-term plan, well then over time, as we deal with inflation that we have dealt with at least the past couple of years, let's hope it's not that high, but as we continue to deal with inflation, those dollars aren't going to go as far. And so making sure that you're thinking about your long-term plan for the next 20, 25, 30, and even 40 years in retirement, as opposed to just thinking about the volatility that we're having today. I get it. It's an election year. That adds a lot of concern to what's going on in the markets. You know, we've had a pretty decent run up in the markets over the past couple months. So I understand that there's a lot of concern, and there always has been some sort of concern. There's always been some sort of event. I can remember back to, Brexit and all of those days. We've got debt ceilings galore over the past number of years. There's always going to be something that's going to drive volatility. So basing your entire retirement success and on what the news today, and basing your investment strategy on the news today and locking that in isn't focused on the long term, because there's always going to be something there, but you want to make sure that you're able to at least participate in growth for the long term, because that's what retirement is supposed to be. That brings us to mistake number 6, and that is putting too much money into an annuity. Look, I'm not here to say that annuities are the best thing, and I'm not here to say they're the worst thing. They're very polarizing investments. I believe that you need to plan for that annuity in your specific retirement plan and analyze whether or not it's the best fit for you. But where I've seen the mistake come from is when people put too much money into an annuity. And I'm talking 60, 70, 80, 90% of their money into an annuity. You have to remember, annuities will tie up your money, limit the liquidity that you have. They have limited growth, and it's just something that you want to make sure that fits into your specific retirement plan. I see all too often, annuities can sound great. They're the only thing in the financial services industry you can say the word guarantee with. So yeah, that sounds fantastic. You can get guaranteed income. You can get guaranteed returns, but that guarantee isn't just going to be too good to be true. It comes with some ties. It ties up your money. It does limit the amount of growth that you have. So you really want to make sure that if you're thinking about it, and if it sounds too good to be true, just run an analysis of your retirement with it and without it, and see where you stack up best. Let the planning and the numbers do the work, not the sales pitch or the fancy brochure that's in front of you. Now, the 7th mistake that I see happen is that people don't factor in spending increases into their retirement plan, especially in the early stages. Because most people heard of all the rules of thumb. You need to plan on spending 80% of your income or 75%. Well, the reality is most people don't realize that you just added 5 extra Saturdays to your life. So now you've got to fill those days. And most people, at least the ones that we work with, didn't retire just to sit at home and watch Netflix. Now, I get that programming on streaming services is fantastic, but that's not the goal of why you actually stepped away and retired. So most people end up spending time with their family, their friends in social settings, and so they don't factor in the fact that they're going to spend a little bit more money in those early years that we like to call the go-go years, where it's exciting, it's new, you want to spend time out in the world, that's going to cost a little bit more money. So factoring in that to your financial plan is going to be important, because that's going to be the basis for how you should invest in retirement, what your distribution strategy should be. Everything is going to be based on your spending. So you want to make sure that you're planning appropriately for what that spending is going to be. Now, the next mistake that we often see is that people didn't take advantage of benefits while they were working. In particular, a lot of companies these days offer legal benefits. It's a small amount that costs you, anywhere between $7 and $12 a month to get access to legal benefits. Well, in that legal benefit, you most likely are able to access a lawyer to put together a basic estate plan. It's a way where instead of spending a couple $1,000s doing it, you're able to do it for around $100. And it's a great benefit that most people aren't taking advantage of. And so when they are in retirement and they're thinking about setting up their estate plan and putting together a will and trust and powers of attorneys, they always look back and go, I wish I would have done that in the cheaper version, because I would have saved myself hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. So if you're working for a large company that offers some sort of legal benefit and you're thinking about retirement, that is something that you might want to consider, especially while you're working and you have that benefit. Another option that I see people wish that they would have taken advantage of more, especially now, is the Roth option within a 401k. There's a lot of talk about Roth conversions and backdoor Roths, but nowadays a lot of 401ks offer just a Roth 401k. It allows you to defer money after tax, allow it to grow after tax without there being taxes when you take money out of it. And so whether or not a Roth is right for you, that's something that's based on your current income and your current tax rate. But it is something that most people look back and go, I wish that the Roth option was available to me, or that I at least took advantage of it. And the last thing that people wish that they took advantage of while they were working is some sort of deferred compensation plan. A way that, towards the tail end of their career, if they had the opportunity, that they were able to shift some of their income to be able to be distributed to them when they are retired. Because towards the later end of the years, that's where they're typically making the most money, and they had the opportunity to start planning ahead and wish that they would have deferred some of that income for the first few years of retirement, because that might have been the decision to be able to delay Social Security for an extra couple of years. So just think about all the benefits that you have while you're working, and whether or not you're fully maximizing every single benefit that's available to you. Now, the ninth mistake that I see almost every person make, and this one is one that we've talked about quite a bit on the channel, which is they've failed to plan for how they're going to spend their free time. Like I said before, you've got 5 extra Saturdays, but it's not just about how you're going to fill it with what you're going to do, but also thinking who you're going to do it with. What's going to drive you? What's going to make you fulfilled? What's going to bring you joy? Because at work, at least for most people, work was challenging. Work was their sense of purpose. For years, when people ask me what I do, I say I'm a financial advisor. Well, when you were working and people asked you what you did, my guess is you told them what your job was, and that was the function of part of who you were. And part of who I am is I'm Jonathan Rankin, financial advisor. But is that something does my identity go away once I am actually retired? And we see that happened to a lot of people where they were retiring, they didn't think about any aspect of the social side of it, and they go into retirement and they end up feeling bored, or they're just lonely. They have nobody to talk to because all of their social circle was back at the office. So taking time to think about what retirement's going to look like from the social side is extremely important. And the last mistake that we typically see is that people wish that they retired earlier. This ultimately comes down from the lack of planning that people did early on to know that they could have financially retired 2, 3, even 5 years earlier had they done the planning. Because there's this common misconception that you only have to start planning within the first 2 or 3 or 5 years before you retire. The earlier you start planning, whether it's in your 30s, 40s, 50s, you name it, the earlier you could start planning, the better. Because then you're going to have an idea of what's actually possible for you. What does retirement look like for you? Not based on the numbers of some random program, but how does every part of your financial life fit into your retirement, and what is possible? That's what most people want to see. What is possible? And so that is the number one mistake that I see people make, is that they wish they had retired earlier, but it's really based on the fact they wish they would have planned earlier. So those are the 10 mistakes that I see new retirees make all too often. And if you are nearing retirement, or even if you're decades away and you just wonder, what does retirement look like for you? What are things that you should be thinking about to make sure that you're in the best place to get to that goal of retirement? Do us a favor, use that link in the description below, reach out to us. A member of our team would be happy to spend some time with you, understanding your individual circumstances and how retirement looks for you and your family. With that, I'm Jonathan Rankin. Thank you for watching. Once again, I'm Jonathan Rankin, the founder of Theorem Wealth Management. And if you're interested in seeing how we help our clients plan and execute their retirement, be sure to visit us at www.theoremwm.com or click the link in the description below to get started today. I look forward to talking with you.